many thanks for joining us on the program. I am Folashade Ogurinde. It's been 16 years since Nigeria cleared up its debt profile when the Paris Club of Creditors generously wrote off over 80% of the nation's debt. However, Nigeria's foreign debt has since grown 3 times more since 2007, as the Debt Management Office disclosed that Nigeria's public debt was over 38 trillion naira as at the end of third quarter of 2021. But beyond the rise in debt profile, which has elicited mixed reactions, the affairs of a government's borrowing from China, which the Debt Management Office says amounts to $3.48 billion as of June 2021. Now, China's loan conditions, which majorly leads to forfeiture of the asset, as seen in Zambia and Southeast Asian country Laos, raises questions over Nigeria's economic future. To discuss this further, I'm joined by Managing Director, Kairos Capital Limited, Sam Chidoka. Thank you very much for joining us on the program. Now, it's interesting to note how Nigeria moved from $2.11 billion in foreign debt in 2007 to 38 trillion naira in 2021. What do you make of this?
Well, thank you for having me. Over time, you're right. There was a time under President Olusegun Obasanjo, we reduced our debt profile to about circa $2 billion thereabout. But over time, the debt has grown again. In 2015, we were somewhere around 12 trillion naira in foreign debt, and in total debt, actually. As at today, or was it yesterday, DMO released the results showing that we're somewhere around 38 trillion naira in total debt as a nation. Means that we have borrowed quite a bit in the last 6 years thereabout. And basically what we borrowed to do is to stopgap our budget, our annual budget. We've always had a budget deficit. Revenues have not matched up to expected expenditure. You could attribute this to many things: the slump in the price of oil, COVID-induced slump in price of oil. We've gone into recession twice, and we sort of had to spend our way through it, and we didn't have the money, so we borrowed the money. And also, we tried to build infrastructure, and we don't have the money, we borrowed. But what is more worrying is that if you look at the analysis, we're borrowing to curb, to spend on recurrent expenditure, and that for me is not the good thing. Today, we have excess of 90% debt to revenue ratio, and that is also very worrying. So yes, our debt position is indeed very worrying.
Now, experts have said borrowing for infrastructural development is not a bad idea in itself. But in your own assessment, has Nigeria lived up to that demand?
Well, I have to agree with those who have said so. When you borrow to build infrastructure, because what infrastructure does is that it helps you to grow your economy, helps you to grow your GDP, helps you to be more productive, helps you to get revenue, especially when you're investing in infrastructure that could bring revenue. So for instance, if we are borrowing to invest in the rail project, and the rails, people use them and pay for them, and you're ring fencing the revenue from that rail project to also pay back the debt, then it's good. But when you find that you are borrowing to fund recurrent expenditures, that is salaries and other overhead, how do we know this? If you look at the actual budgetary spend, you will find that the total revenue from oil and gas to Nigeria and from taxation is not up to our total recurrent expenditure. So what that means is that we are borrowing to pay salaries and other overhead. That has to stop. We need to cut down on either the salaries or other overheads and borrow strictly for infrastructure that could grow the economy, grow the GDP, and provide us with resources and revenue to pay back the debt. But then again, you see, there is something called debt sustainability. There is something called your ability to manage and pay back your debt. When we get to a place where we cannot manage the debt, we need to turn back and ask ourselves, what else do we need to do to fund our expenditure? It can't just be borrowing for borrowing's sake.
Spoke about debt sustainability, and I'd like you to talk about, in your own opinion, do you think, or how soon do you think Nigeria can pay back these loans?
Well, pay back the loans, it's going to be a long time, and that's the truth. It's going to take quite some time. Remember, in 2006, 2007, thereabout, when President Obasanjo paid back our debt, remember that some of those debts were taken in the 70s and some were taken in the early 80s. And we waited for over 20 years to pay them back, some up to 30 years to pay back the debt. And I think that that's the same thing that is probably going to happen at this time at the rate at which we are going, except we have a critical rethink of our financial infrastructure, how we manage our finances. If we continue this way, then we're going to be having this debt for a long, long time. I know that we always talk about debt to GDP, saying that Nigeria's debt to GDP is still manageable. But I'd rather like to use the ratio of debt to revenue because GDP doesn't pay back debt, it's revenue that pays back debt. And at a point in this nation, we're having 99% debt to GDP, debt to revenue ratio, and that's not sustainable. That means from the last report I saw, we're somewhere around 70% today because of price of oil has gone up to over $70. That means for every 1 naira we get, we spend 70 kobo paying debt. How do we now sustain other expenditure that we need as a nation? That means what it simply means is that you have to borrow more. So we need to rethink our borrowing. We need to rethink our financial infrastructure. We need to rethink how to generate more money within the economy. We need to rethink how to grow the tax base and make sure more Nigerians are paying taxes. We need to rethink how to reduce government non-capital expenditure. We can't be talking about certain type of expenditures in an economy that is struggling at this point in time.
So now let's talk about Nigeria's growing interest in Chinese loans. Do you have any concerns, especially when you take into consideration some of the conditions tied to these loans?
Well, I look at the Chinese loans on two fronts. The first one of the things I like about the Chinese loans is that there are project-specific loans. So the Chinese will give you a loan to build your airport, and they will insist that their company will build the airport. Same thing with your rail, same thing with your bridges and other infrastructure or power. So to that extent, you are certain that infrastructure gets delivered. So if you look at it from that perspective, the Chinese loans are not bad. Also, the Chinese loans are long-dated loans. They're giving you 25 years, 30 years loan at single digit. So in terms of tenor and in terms of pricing, they are not bad. Now, there have been speculations about other conditions attached to the loan. And I don't like to talk about speculations. I like to talk about what I know. I've not seen the loan agreement. Some claim that the Chinese have put conditions that stipulates that if we're not able to pay, they will take back the asset. Well, if you're a Chinese, you would think that that's a smart move. If you're a Nigerian, you'll be worried about that. But what is more important is that I don't think that Nigeria is planning to default on the loans. I think the plan is that we're going to pay back and continue to own those assets. So to the extent of pricing, to the extent of infrastructure delivery, to the extent of tenor, I think the Chinese loans are not bad. But if there are other conditions that make them untoward, I haven't seen those conditions.
But still, let's talk about Nigeria's ability to pay back loans. I mean, from our past history, we saw that in 2005 through 2007, when the former president Olusegun Obasanjo worked very hard to pay back at least, to write off 80% of the loan and pay back the remaining ones. But we've seen, the present administration and the previous ones accumulating this debt. Now, we've seen the case in Kenya, Uganda, Zambia, and some other countries having issues paying back their debt. Do you have any concern that Nigeria just might find itself in this position?
Well, it's a valid concern to have that Nigeria may find itself in that position. But remember, our key commodity is oil. Our key revenue driver is still oil and gas as of today. We're doing our best to diversify our revenue sources, but as of today, oil still contributes a huge portion of our revenue. Bearing that in mind, I think that once the price of oil remains at levels above $70 or $80, we should be fine. But yes, it's good to worry because if you're not worried about it, then we will just go gung-ho and just borrow as much as we can. And I don't think that's sustainable. I think that we need to plan a structure that makes sure that when we borrow, we are able to service the debt and we're able to pay back. So I make the point that we should borrow and invest in infrastructure that has cash flow implications. And please, when we invest in this infrastructure, I plead that we try and commercialize the infrastructure so that it's not run by the federal government. History has taught us that the Nigerian federal government does not have the wherewithal to run infrastructure. We have Nigerian Airways, we had Nigerian shipping line, we had the railway corporation, all of these Nigerian government institutions, NITEL, all got run down over time. I think that as we borrow money and invest in infrastructure, the next level, the next move must be to either privatize or commercialize or concession that infrastructure so that we can add the efficiencies of the private sector to be able to tap into the cash flow and use that cash flow to pay back the loans. If we don't do that, it may be difficult for us to service our loans going forward.
Well, it's been a very pleasant first half conversation, but thank you very much, Managing Director, Kairos Capital Limited, Mr. Sam Chidoka. Many thanks for your contributions on the program. Well, we'll take a break here, but when we return, we will turn our attention to the 5G spectrum and its proposed impact on Nigeria's social and economic development. Do stay with us. Corruption not in my country.
Hello, Alahaji. Right now I'm in Abuja. No. Hello, Adamu. Right now I'm in Kano. Yes. When I get back, I will just call you. Look, what is wrong with you? I'm talking on the phone and you are gesticulating and doing. What's wrong with you?
Daddy, where exactly are we as we speak?
Are you alright? This is Lagos.
Well, you just lied to someone that we're in Abuja.
Keep quiet. Who told you can tell an elderly person is lying?
Daddy, you just lied. And by lying, you are raising corrupt children for the future of Nigeria. That is corruption, not in my country. Corruption not in my country.
Welcome back. There are indications that plans to implement the 5th generation spectrum in Nigeria is gradually becoming a reality. This comes as MTN and Mafab Communications Limited won the bid for the spectrum auctioned by the Nigerian government on Monday. Minister of Communications and Digital Economy Issa Pantami says the deployment of the 5G network will help address Nigeria's security challenges as well as improve the country's digital space. But implementing the 5G network has not been a walk in the park, as myths and conspiracy theories often threaten local acceptance of the innovation. To shed more light on what the 5G spectrum is and its advantages, ICT expert Olushola Teniola joins me on the program. Thank you very much for your time. Now, in plain terms now, could you help clarify what the 5G spectrum is and what makes it different from other spectrums?
Yeah, thanks for that question. It's important to note that 5G is now almost eventually upon us. What do I mean by that? Essentially, yesterday, there were two bidders, or provisionally successful bidders, for the 5G 3.5 gigahertz spectrum. And this is important because only this time last year, we were under COVID-19 lockdown, and there were a lot of conspiracies around 5G. So I'm really happy and proud that Nigeria has been able to come through that and now kick-started what would be an evolution technologically for Nigeria in terms of adopting 5G and after 5G swiftly going to 6G. But now, for now, we have 5G. It's a technology that will embrace various applications. 4G itself is still a great technology, and we have to improve on its adoption in terms of its coverage. The broadband plan of 2020-2025 states 90% coverage by 2025. We're still aiming for that, but we realize that Nigeria cannot stand still, and having the 5G technology available in key parts of where it's needed, i.e. the enterprise segments, it's very important that private networks can now have access to really high speed, low latency applications that are only possible on the 5G technology. Secondly, we know that the digital financial services and financial inclusion is really important. Aspects to do with how we can be able to build infrastructure at a cost-effective manner 5G provides that, and not only provides it, but it also reduces the cost. So we see an improved rollout of this technology in terms of backhauling traffic and other areas where previous generations could not achieve. I think the main important one here is that it gives an opportunity for telemedicine, immersive applications, and also, very importantly, to start to adopt certain artificial intelligence and data analytics for the security apparatus. So 5G, a lot is riding on it, a lot of promises are riding on it. We are really happy that we now have two potential licensees that have been able to bid and now need to pay for the spectrum and then begin rolling out in 2022.
Now, how significant is the 5G network for Nigeria, and in what ways will the 5G transform telecommunications in Nigeria?
Well, the reality is that the telecommunications industry in Nigeria is one that depicts high teledensity, a very matured market in the voice segment of the industry, and now an emerging data-centric approach to ensuring that those that are offline can come online. And I think that's the challenge for Nigeria. And Nigeria has a very growing population. So we see that growing population should be an advantage to us because it brings more of the youth online, more of the youth who will be ably employed to ensure that the technology is adopted in a manner that gives Nigeria an advantage in Africa. So we have the African Free Continental Trade Agreement already established. It's important that digital services and digital products will be the litmus test for the way and means that Africa can adopt digital technology. As you know, we have a very burgeoning Nollywood industry. We have great music. These things will be digitalized, and be created as digital currency. So we need to be able to leverage on our talents, and that's mainly amongst the youth. We need to digitize it, codify it, and then try to export it. And the only way to do that is by creating a digital infrastructure. And it's very important that once we build this digital infrastructure, we have to adopt the latest technology, because it's all about the consumer experience. And the consumer experience amongst the Gen Zs, the Gen Ys, and the Alphas is immediacy. Immediacy is the thing that actually ensures that the eyeballs and the capture of the youth is actually addressed. So I can see great possibilities. I forgot one area that I know that would be booming, is the gaming industry as well. So there's a great opportunity for various multi-sectorial growth on the back of this technology. So what I see is only positive things if we learn to adopt it over the next 6 to 8 years. I think initially it will be driven to the high net worth areas, and then eventually, when NCC has stipulated, as they've done, that all states should be covered by 2025, 2026, and 2028, then it will be of mass market, and it will then be an opportunity for us to really prepare for 6G, as I said, but to really have benefited by adopting and producing a diversified knowledge-based economy on the back of 5G.
Nigeria's Minister of Communications and Digital Economy, Issa Pantami, said Nigeria is hoping to have the widest 5G in Africa. What impact do you think this will have on the country?
Yeah, I want to take us a bit back, because I believe 5G assists and creates a platform, but we have to remember that solving the crime issues that we are facing, and it's, you know, cybersecurity is one of the big ones now, because we have the kinetics that demonstrates that the physical warfare is something that we have to use data that describes the patterns of banditry, kidnapping, terrorism, is something that other countries have adopted and utilized technology. And that wasn't based on 5G. So really, we need to build that security apparatus, really build it so that data flows from one side of the security apparatus to another. So basically, there's a greater synchronization, there's a removal of silos so that intelligence information is shared. That's not based on 5G. That's something that we need to do. That's the first thing that we really need to do, is to ensure that the quality of data is relevant and robust enough, and that it can give immediate support to the work that the ladies and the men out in the field are fighting. They need that latest information. So that's the first apparatus. So the second bit would be enhanced databases. We need to have our databases harmonized. The NIN and BVNs and other databases that are out there has to be harmonized. Harmonized so that we can have data that captures the individual citizen that claims to be living in and working or studying or playing in Nigeria. It's important that we identify those individuals, because the technology that can assist is still about devices. Devices can be used by many people in many different ways. So we need to be able to superimpose those devices with an identity that actually captures a real person. That's the second thing. So we need to really harmonize the data on the databases that we have. Then thirdly, we need to really start to adopt artificial intelligence, machine learning, facial recognition, robotics, and many other areas that are leading technologies that really have demonstrated that through automation, machines can assist in us humans in being able to solve complex issues and dynamically changing issues. And that's the reality of cybersecurity. So the various cyber threats that are presently here and the new cyber threats that will exist has to be actually addressed on the back of 5G technology that allows those types of applications to be immediate, to be responsive. So we don't have a reactive security situation like what we're trying to address right now. The technology in the past aided it to a certain degree, but didn't present an opportunity that 5G presents in terms of low latency, which gives immediacy of reaction, and also very high speeds, which allows different types of very data-driven, power-consuming applications to exist. And I think that the possibilities that 5G brings will assist the security apparatus for the human aspect in terms of digital skills, digital literacy, and training is really important. We can't take that away, because machines have to coexist with humans to be able to solve these very complex and very dynamic and multifaceted security issues that we face right now.
Now, the minister has also said that the 5G technology could help solve security challenges. What do you make of this?
Yeah, that's a very excellent question. I think that really anyone who's listening to this interview should take two things away. We shouldn't focus just on the technology. We should focus on the outcomes. What do I mean by that? 5G is the 5th generation of GSM. Nigeria was opportune to have introduced GSM in 2001. Several players in the market that currently exist have rolled out GSM 2G. 2G, they've moved to 3G and 4G. Each generation change has increased the data speeds on the network. So 5G gives an opportunity to have 10 to 100 times the speed of 4G. It doesn't mean to say that 4G is slow, it's just that it gives an opportunity to have even higher speeds. So it complements other technologies that are out there. Remember, it's just one technology. It is not a silver bullet. It is not the panacea to all our problems. It's just an enabling technology. So what does it actually really provide that 4G didn't provide? It provided what I called the fact that you can have many devices connected in a meaningful manner, and they can interoperate in a manner that allows billions of devices to communicate. That would have overwhelmed the 4G technology platform. And that's a great plus in terms of machine-to-machine communication. Secondly, it allows for very, very low latency. And what does that effectively mean? It means when you send information, it will arrive in less than, in the case of 5G, 5 milliseconds or even 1 millisecond. That's almost the response of a human being. So irrespective of the distance, you are able to have something very interactive. So it removes some of the buffering and the jitter that existed in 4G. And then finally, you now have an opportunity for very high speeds. Very high speeds allows much more detailed, much more granular, much more data intensive applications to work. So that's why I refer to Nollywood and our music industry. We can now keep that data in Nigeria on the back of cloud services and data centers connected to 5G without having to now store our information, our data, our intellectual property outside the country and relying on, for instance, fiber technology to connect to foreign data centers. So that's a great opportunity. It keeps jobs local in Nigeria. It creates an opportunity for the youth to contribute to the digital age. And that digital age will be more enhanced with advancements in technology like 5G. Thank you very much.
Well, ICT experts, Olusola Tenyola, thank you very much for your contributions and thank you for coming on the program.
Most welcome.
And it's a wrap on the program. Thank you for joining me. See you again next time. Bye for now.